How to Survive Until You're Published, Season 1, Episode 12, Bringing Your Characters to Life with guest author Megan Walker.
Hello and welcome to How to Survive Until You're Published, the podcast, because if you're drowning in words, then so are we, and you might as well not do it alone.
So today we're super excited to have Megan Walker on here. Megan Walker was raised on a berry farm in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, and I probably said that wrong, where her imagination took her to times past and worlds away. While earning her degree in early childhood education, she married her one true love and started a family. But her imaginings of Regency England wouldn't leave her alone, so she picked up a pen, and the rest is history. She lives in St. Louis, Missouri with her husband and 3 children. Well, Megan, welcome. We're super excited to have you on.
Thank you. I'm super excited to chat with you guys.
So today we wanted to talk about bringing characters to life and how you take your characters from being like plain 2D to being relatable and alive.
Yeah, it's a feat, let me tell you. It is not always easy to bring your characters alive on the page. It's funny. So my friend Jonah Barker and I were talking the other day, and I was thinking about this podcast and how we were going to chat, and she sent this meme to me, and it was about writers talking on craft with other writers. And it said, "I don't know how to do this." And then the other guy responds, "I don't even know what we're doing." And it's like so true to life, I feel like. Because when you talk about writing with other writers and just in general, so much of it is, I don't know what I'm doing. I hope I'm doing it right. Like, so anytime I feel like I have anything to say, I always want to be like, I actually don't necessarily know what I'm doing, but hopefully what I'm doing works some of the time,
Yeah.
Because that's like what we want when we write. I feel like the most important thing is to create characters that feel real and who can make us feel things. Because then the story becomes so much more important when we have these people that we come to love and who we root for, right? You think? I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. No, I definitely agree.
Yeah.
I feel like if the character falls flat, that's probably one of the biggest reasons I'd DNF a book. So like do not finish because it's just hard to like relate, or they just seem 2D, or they're just the perfect Mary Sue who just does nothing wrong, has nothing exciting or like even remotely dismaying happen in their life. Like it's just, I don't know. There's something about having an emotional, relatable character.
So when I'm writing too, I like to think like, I don't know, what about my life, I guess, makes me okay, back it up a little. Sorry. My thoughts are always like this jungle. This is how I write books. Literally how I write books is like a web of like jumbled up things, and then I somehow piece it together to form a book. So this is just me. This is normal. I don't know. So I'm thinking about like acting. I feel like I was in theater when I was in high school. It's the silliest thing ever. But like when you're like trying to portray a character in acting, you maybe haven't experienced what that character is experienced, but you have experienced some things, right? So like, I don't know. So for example, like some of the characters in my Regency romance books have lost parents, and I've never lost a parent before. So I don't know actually what that feels like, but I have lost a son and I've lost a grandparent. And so I have felt like grief before. And I know that grief in and of itself is like different for everybody, but I feel like a lot of writing characters and trying to make them more 3D than 2D is figuring out how to put your own life experiences into someone else, even though it's different, but like, does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah, it does.
But like saying like, oh, this person has lost a parent. I don't know what that's like, but I do know what this is like. So how can I use my experience to kind of piece together what they could be experiencing? I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, I like that. I think you're not even the only author I've heard say that, because I can't remember where it was. It was at a writing conference though, or some like convention, and someone asked them, they're like, well, what character you've written is most like you in your stories? And the author just kind of responded, well, they all have at least a piece of me because they're pulling from my life experience. Where it's like maybe they aren't exactly you because like you said, you haven't lost a parent, right? And the characters in your Regency have, but you still know grief and you know those feelings, and you're pulling from that to write them.
Yeah, and even like simple stuff. So grief is like that huge, overarching theme that we oftentimes use. I feel like in Regencies, especially because death was such a prominent thing back then. Everybody, people were dying, unfortunately, all the time back then.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have the medicine and those sorts of things that we have now. But anyway, even like smaller stuff like being hungry, and I don't know, another part of making your characters, I think, more 3D than 2D is giving them those little things that are human, that we experience, that are relatable, like being hungry and being mad about it. Like I feel that on the daily. So I know that my characters have to feel something like that too, if they're hungry. And maybe my character's already mad about something. Maybe she's even more mad because she's hungry, and that's something that they address, like these humanizing characteristics really can make a character feel just more rounded and more relatable. And I feel like those characters are the ones that I root for and love, are the ones that feel like, I don't know, like I can relate, like I get you, So like some of the big stuff and the small stuff too, you have to like pay attention to those details that are so hard as writers. We beat ourselves over the head trying to remember to put in these little details that will form the big picture for us. I don't know if that makes sense, but obviously I think it like varies too by character, because our characters are all so unique, just like we are so unique and different. Anyway.
Yeah, I think there's go ahead, Amy. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I'm loving this. This is so cool. Because just thinking about the concept of pulling from your life experience, I think it's so interesting. I've told Megan this before, that when I talk to people and when I, sympathize with people and they tell me about the experiences they're going through, sometimes I feel like I have a hard time like understanding because I haven't been through that experience. But at the same time, there's like a piece of me that feels like I know what they're going through. And I was thinking about it one day and I was like, why does that happen? Like I've never gone through that, but somehow I know. And I feel like the way we react to our life experiences and the things that happen are all kind of central core emotions that a lot of us feel. And so I think it's interesting that we can kind of use those central core emotions in our characters and be able to use our own experiences to pull into those. I just think that is so cool. This is
Absolutely.
a concept I've never thought about this. This is really awesome.
Well, don't you think that that's why Harry Potter is so beloved? I am like the biggest Harry Potter geek in the world. I love J.K. Rowling with my whole heart. If I ever met her, I would just hold on to her for life. But I think that Harry Potter is so darn relatable and we love it so much because even though none of us can fathom being the boy who lived, right? Like none of us can truly fathom that. She writes about themes and real life things that even though we're not wizards and witches, we still are like, I feel this. I relate to this. Like, I get you, Harry. Anyway, sorry. That's a whole nother story of its own. I could dive into Harry Potter for days. But yeah. Anyway. And also, like, don't you think, sorry, this is going to be another tangent.
Yeah, keep going. You're great.
Yeah. When I think about like, creating realistic characters. Oh, okay. So I'll just get really real. I like struggle with mental illness. Like, so I have anxiety, like pretty crazy. And I think that is actually kind of a common thing with artists. Like we all have a little bit of something going on.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yes. Which I love. I'm totally happy to be a part of that club. But anyway, I have been through several amazing therapists in my life who've really helped me. And they've taught me a lot about like how we react to emotion and how we respond to emotion-fueled situations. And so another thing that I think about a lot when I think about writing these like emotion-filled characters is how like our bodies respond to emotion and how our minds respond to like big emotional situations. Because I don't know, I'm sure you've heard of like fight or flight and all those sorts of things. So like when I write my characters, like for instance, I'm thinking of my last story, Miss Newberry's List. My character Charlie, he's my hero. He's got a lot of baggage. Like he's got a lot of issues going on, and he's really that fight or flight. So anytime things happen to him, he's almost always in that kind of mindset. I don't know if that's right. But anyway, even like with little things that he does. So that's another thing that I'm not super great at, that I hope to be better at with time. Remembering like those things that are like real human characteristics when big emotions come. Like it's not just, oh, I'm feeling sad, or like, oh, this is really hard, but like my body's reacting, like I'm physically reacting to this emotion that's happening. I don't know. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I feel like that's a big part. Megan, that's cool. I think that's a big part of being able to build your characters well, being able to see how those emotions reflect in your physical. I think that's a gift. That's interesting to be able to recognize that and put that on the page. That's cool.
Like it's hard, man. I can't even get my own my own life sometimes, figuring out like what I'm doing, what triggers me, or like why I'm upset, or anyway. And with women, writing women versus writing men is totally different, I feel like, too. So it's hard, but I feel like when writers get it right, it's like right on the money, you know what I mean? Like
it is, yeah.
It's just a great experience to read.
Yeah, I can like definitely think of examples in my head of stories where I've connected with, where I'm like crying with the character because of how they're reacting and like experiencing it both physically and emotionally.
So how do we do it? I don't know. How do we do it? It's I think it's just a process where you just reread, and so much of it, I think as writers too, we beat ourselves up because our first draft like isn't that great, right? Like we're like, but I'm not feeling it, or I want to feel it stronger.
Yeah,
and,
but
like,
it's also not supposed to be great.
Correct. Remembering that your like 10th draft still might not be your favorite, but it's those like little details that you remember as you're drafting and as you're rereading and rewriting, and as your friends read with you and they're like, I didn't feel this. Oh my gosh, my critique partners, you guys, I love them with my whole heart. If they ever listen to this, they're gonna message me right away and be like, really, Megan? But they are the worst. And best, I should say best, at calling me out. They're like, Megan, I want to feel this. I want to feel this stronger. And I'm like, hey, you guys. But I'm also so grateful, because it's hard sometimes when you're in your head reading your own stuff. You feel it, and you just assume other people feel it. And sometimes they don't, and it requires some rewrites. So being open to that is huge.
Yeah, I feel like through one of my drafts I did this, and the other Megan, she pulled me out on it a lot because I had a hard time bringing my emotion in. Yeah, I'm like you. I'm so bad at that. But I feel like too, part of the first draft and part of that first process is actually feeling it for yourself first.
Yeah.
Because like, I don't know, I totally, like, this last draft that I just finished was completely 2D. I had the hardest time. I had the hardest time digging deep, and there were a lot of problems. My characters weren't fitting my plot correctly, and lots of other things. But I couldn't dig deep. And then I've done a lot of changes. I kind of fixed my characters. I replotted. I came up with a really good backstory, and I can feel them. I can understand them now. And so when I sat down to write, I could just go on tangents with my character, which I couldn't do before. Like, I couldn't do that with her.
So do you do a lot of when you're plotting, I guess, do you do a lot of like questioning and like, why would my character do this, or what's their backstory?
Or, gosh, yes. Yeah, I have been doing that. I've been working on this project that I'm working on now for about a year and a half, and that is what I've done from the beginning, is just so many questions and digging deep and digging deeper and just trying to understand who they are as a person and how they react to things. And
it is so hard for me to do that, and I envy people who can do that. I get so bored. I'm like answering questions like, who was it? I think Sarah Eden. I love her so much. She said one time, that she answers like 1,000 questions. That probably is insane, but she
Oh my
answers
gosh, I don't know if I could do that.
for her characters. Yeah, I know. And I'm like, how do you know? Like, do you like make some of it up, or do you genuinely answer this for them? I find that if I just, for me, what's more for people who are too overwhelmed or just get bored by it, like me, I have ADHD, so I'm like, I can't. I tend to like just like dream about them, and I don't know, daydream about them, my characters, and let them talk in my head, and then maybe I just make up conversations and see what they say. I don't know. I
love that. I kind of
weird?
No, I do that too. I'm not really.
I was gonna say I also do it. So if it's weird, we're all weird together.
Yeah. No, I don't really sit down and do questions per se. I'll do conversations out loud for sure.
Yes.
But yeah, it's more just understanding the feeling, I feel like, is what you're saying. It's just like feeling your character, like being able to say when, like I call it their origin scene, when they're having like the scene before the book where everything falls apart and they feel, and that's where they build their wound, you know?
Yes.
You need to be able to feel what they're feeling in that moment and like feel heartbroken with them.
Totally agree.
And I think
that's hard.
Yeah. It's hard to get there. It's extremely hard. You can't just make it up. You have to get it.
And I feel too like I have to write the first like 5 chapters, and often I have to write the first 3 chapters over and over and over again until I really feel their voice, like until I'm really like, here you are, I'm with you now. And then it's so much easier to finish the book after you get those first, I should probably say like 10, once you get those first like 5 or 10 chapters in and you're like, I can feel you now, then it's like, you know, pretty easy going for me to get to the end. But definitely, and like, isn't it funny how we as authors, we have to think about and like dream up the year or years before the book even starts that no one will ever read, no one will ever know, and it's so much time, but we have to do it so that we can know them well enough to write for them.
Yeah, it's like you're building a person. It's what is so insane. Yeah, it's insane.
So insane that we do this. Like we spend so much time doing it.
Yeah, it's
but
like
there's a joy in it.
Yeah, and then I mean, for me, I built a fantasy world too, and you know.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, but
I would love one day to be able to build a world like that, but oh my gosh, I can't imagine the time and energy and effort that you put into that.
Well, I can't imagine all the research. Research makes me cry. So
I love it.
Yeah,
sometimes
same,
it makes
honestly.
me cry too.
Yeah, but one day I do want to write a historical, so that's...
One day I want to write a fantasy, so we'll have to teach each other.
Kind of going back to putting a piece of yourself into it, because I think we do beat ourselves up as authors for that first draft being 2D, but if you think about it, a lot of the times when you're really digging deep with your characters, it's because you're also digging deep into some of your own emotions you've experienced, and that can be really scary to put out on the page and to other people, you know?
Definitely. I definitely agree. Well, I think writing is scary in general because you're putting something that you've made up into the hands of a stranger and asking them to be kind, right? Hoping that they love it. But if they don't, you're hoping that they're kind to you because it is meaningful to you, if not to anyone else, because you're putting a piece of yourself in it. I mean, when I think of the books and characters that I've written, I have put some of myself or some of my life or some of my experiences into probably every character that I wrote, whether I meant to or not, just because I am who I am. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's like scary to do that. But I think that my best scenes and my best characters that I feel happiest with and that I love the most are the ones that I let myself like freely write and freely just go wherever it took me and however I felt. I mean, this is kind of silly. I think a lot of authors probably can relate. Maybe you guys can relate. Like I have cried writing some of my scenes because I felt it and I've put my heart into it. And so I think Not necessarily that everybody else would cry during those moments, but I think that means for sure that like we do write with emotion, like we do write our hearts on the page.
Yeah. Like for me as a writer, one of my goals is to be able to write a book with characters that are emotionally driven, that when you get done, you feel just emotionally drained, but happy and excited, but also sad. I want to, and I feel like you're right. You have to kind of give up a piece of yourself when you're writing, to convey those emotions. You have to be vulnerable within yourself to be able to bring that across to your reader. And all that.
And I think you too have to kind of be like, feel free to let go of stereotypes and to let go of like society's expectations sometimes, because sometimes I think it's scary to write a book or to write about characters who don't fit social norms, or I don't know. There's a tendency sometimes when I write, and I, hopefully you can relate, to write characters who I know will be accepted, who I know people will either like, or I don't know. Does that make sense? And I think that
Yeah, that does.
I think that like when we let ourselves let these characters be who they should be, or who, I don't know, let them have whatever issue it is, even though it will be hard for them to get to wherever they need to be. I'm thinking of what's that book I just read? Shoot, I can't remember the title, but I loved it so much. It was so good. And the hero, this was like a fantasy. The hero was not like a Hercules type, like, like I think she even described him as like being a little pudgy. Like he's just like this like shorter, like cute guy. And he was really into music and like played music for his profession. And like typically when you read like a romance or something, it's like, I'm totally guilty of writing my heroes like built and muscular and whatever. And that's like great. I'm not knocking that at all. I love those. I love those stories. But it was kind of refreshing also to read about this hero who didn't have physical strength, but he had, other forms of strength that were beautiful. And by the end of the book, I loved him so much. He like cried at one point because he was so tired and so exhausted. And I was like, I get this. This is like relatable and real. And anyway, I feel like when we let ourselves kind of go to those spaces sometimes too, it can result in beautiful emotions just as much as other stereotypes that are also, I don't want to feel like I'm like knocking anything, because I love all
you definitely are not.
But yeah, you know what I mean? Like when we push ourselves, I think the payout can be really wonderful. It's really what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I agree. And like, I don't know about you guys, but definitely there's been times where I'm writing where I feel like, because there is a certain pressure to feel like you have to write to market or write to the stereotype or write different things. But there's been times where I know that it would probably be just a much more empowering story, or the emotion would be so much deeper if I wrote it a different way. But sometimes I'm just scared at my inability to write that I like try to shy away from that. And I mean, that's on me, right? I should do better and like really give those characters that chance, because I think like you were saying, if you allow them that chance, it does bring about some of those really beautiful stories. Yes,
and it's very hard to do. Like this is all me talking like my dreams. Like I'm like, I want to do these things, like it's, I don't know. I read these great stories that I absolutely love. And Heidi Kimball is a fantastic example of writing hard things and writing characters who don't necessarily fit like who society, especially in Regency times, would accept, would think acceptable, and Heidi creates lovely, beautiful stories. So she's definitely, I'm shamelessly plugging for my friend. I adore her anyway, but situations that are hard to swallow in some cases, and it's intimidating. Like she said to me, it's intimidating to write like this. I don't think I'm doing it right. Like, or she'll say, I think that I'm like wasting my time, or I don't know that this is going to pan out. And every time it takes a lot of work, but every time she writes beautiful stories. So I totally get that feeling. But again, like just got to push through that first draft, man, and it comes together. So anyway.
Wow. This has been awesome. This has been
Sorry. I'm
No,
such an
it's been-
oversharer.
it's been amazing. No, it's been completely mind-blowing. I feel like this is exactly what we needed to talk about, because this episode is the end of our character arc where episodes, and I feel like this is everything that we needed it to be. So
Well, I'm so glad that I got to come and chat with you guys. This was really, really fun.
Yeah, we were so glad to have you on. So we usually like to leave our listeners with a challenge. So what challenge would you issue them?
Well, I think it's a challenge to me as much as it would be to anybody else, but just to set aside your fears and write something that means something to you. Like when you write with feeling, like we talked about, like it can be really scary. And I often, when I'm writing, I think about my kids, and they're kind of like who I write to. Like I think, like, what themes do I want to leave them with? Like, what do I want to teach them about life or whatever? And I try to craft a story that maybe will help them learn something, or something that they can keep with them forever. So I guess my challenge would be like, what is meaningful to you, and what feeling do you want to portray, or what sort of character journey do you want to portray? And don't be shy about it. Don't like think, oh, I can't do it, or oh, that's too hard, because everything is hard. And I think the best stories are the ones that are a challenge to make. So don't be afraid. Just find what is meaningful to you, and see where it takes you, and keep writing.
I love that.
I love that.
Okay, that is great. Okay, well, thank you so much, Megan, for being on. This has been
Thank
awesome.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you
we
so
really
much.
appreciate it.
Love chatting with you guys.
Because if you're drowning in words, so are we, and you might as well not do it alone.